webinar. We will start in a few minutes, so still time to get a coffee, and then we're going to have an interesting discussion on AI governance. Hello again, welcome to this webinar on scaling AI governance. We'll wait for maybe 1 more minute so everyone can join, and in the meantime, our guest speakers can already switch on the camera and microphone. In Belgium, you can be late up to 15 minutes, not to be offensive, but let's not take it that far for today's webinar, since it's only 45 minutes, right? All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone. This is our joint webinar between Applied AI and Yields. And today we are going to cover a very interesting topic related to scaling AI governance. Now, we would like to make this event as interactive and as practical as possible. So it will be mostly a conversation with plenty of questions. And if you have any questions for us to talk about, and please do not hesitate to post them in the chat. So let's get started maybe with a short introduction. My name is Jos Gheerardyn. I'm one of the founders and also the CEO of Yields. We are a software company that has built an AI governance and model risk management platform. And with me, I have a wealth of experience in AI governance. So maybe Ara, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Josh, for having me here. Hi, everyone. My name is Araceli Alcala, or from some of you, maybe Ara. I'm a regulatory affairs manager for medical devices. I've been in the medical device industry for around 15 years already. I was in the development, and then after a few years, I changed into the regulatory and quality management departments. And I'm very happy to bring some of
You are on mute, Ara.
yeah, whatever they want. They just want to listen to what I'm saying and not joining the webinar.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I'm have experience in the medical device field, a very regulated field, and I'm very happy to be here and bring some of the experience on the AI governance part.
Perfect. Thank you, Ara. And then Alex.
Amazing. Also, thank you, Josh, for a very kind invitation. So my name is Alexander Machado. I'm heading the Trustworthy AI topic at Apply AI initiative. And pretty much I've been working in the area of envelopes over the last 10 years. So basically now we have this new big elephant in the room, that's the European AI Act. And my role focused on how to connect envelopes, basically AI best practices, to implement the European AI Act in a simple way for companies to scale AI governance. So happy to be here and share some insights from this.
Thank you, Alex. And then last but not least, Kuba.
Thanks for having me, Jos. My name is Jakub Szarmach. I'm curator of AI Governance Library. That's an open and free library of resources regarding AI governance, composing of over 200 and growing free resources that anyone can come read and download, contributing to as much as I can to spreading responsible AI practices.
That's a great initiative because knowledge sharing is an extremely important aspect of this field, right? So to get started, so the agenda for today is that we would like to first of all discuss a bit why we are here today, like discuss what has led to say this approach to AI governance, and then after that we will have some Q&A related to these 7 steps in order to scale the AI governance initiatives and organizations. And yeah, throughout the discussion there is plenty of room for Q&A, of course. But before we dive into the material itself, we would like to already run a short poll to have a bit of an understanding of, say, where this audience is. So we would like to understand a bit where you are in the maturity cycle implementing AI governance. Are you mostly on the early and on the early steps, starting to explore the AI Act, setting up a framework, or have you already gone through those different steps, and are you actually maybe already running AI governance in production, say, and continuously improving the setup? So this would be really great, understanding a bit where everyone is, so that our guests can fine-tune their answers later on. Okay, so far, most people seem to be in the earlier phases, which of course is definitely to be expected. Okay, almost half of the audience has voted, so I'm sure there's still a few people who can cast their vote. All right. So it looks like indeed most people are getting started setting up this program, and a fewer of them have already gone through the framework and are working on, say, subsequent iterations. This is, of course, quite logical, I would say, given the fact that, say, AI Act has been in place for only a short amount of time, and most of the actual important requirements related to high-risk AI systems are only going to be in full force as of summer next year. So we still have a little bit of time, but not that much. So I think that's definitely going to be a food for a good discussion. Very good. So then let's definitely get started. And I would like to pass the word to Alex.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. Very interesting survey, actually, and this overlaps with also the figures we see in our surveys internally at Apply AI. But yeah, coming back to the main questions on why we're here today. So as we know, basically AI systems, in particular also general purpose AI systems, are generating a lot of value across different domains, across different use cases. But of course, as with every new technology, also some challenges or risks will arise. In the case of artificial intelligence, there were quite some examples of basically problems to health, safety, and fundamental human rights that AI systems were generating over the last few years. And as a result, the European Commission decided to regulate artificial intelligence with the famous, we know it already, the European AI Act. And despite its many benefits, which basically they have, and today is not a focus for that, it also brings several challenges to big companies who want to implement and comply successfully. So we had to apply a working group with very large companies, including companies like Infineon, Size, Linde, etc., where we brainstorm also what are the main challenges that actually these big companies are facing to implement AI governance. And we summarize them basically into three buckets. So the first one, there was a lot of uncertainty of what steps we have to follow to actually successfully implement the AI Act. So despite we have a lot of AI governance frameworks out there, like IGA, among many others, they were not AI Act first. So there were a lot of questions about exactly what is the journey and what are the layers that should structure the processes to be able to comply. On top of this, as we know, AI governance is basically is a concept that involves multiple stakeholders. So it's not enough a guideline only for governance people, but also you need a guideline for probably MLOps teams and also data science and AI engineering teams. That's why it makes it very complex. On the second part, also there is a need to translate the legal obligations into technical requirements. So we have also some technical working group where the engineers were trying to read the AI Act, the legal text, and it was very, very hard for them to understand what they have to actually do in basically their AI use cases to comply. As a result, a translation step into technical language is also very relevant. And the third biggest challenge we also identified was the uncertainty about what roles or what skill profiles, what set of skills are important to be able to implement the end-to-end AI governance process in your company. So that being said, also we follow a community-driven approach where we, together with all these companies, try to also basically develop the solution space, and in this case, address these challenges. And that's exactly what we name at Apply AI with our partners, the AI Act Governance Pyramid. So basically, it's a framework that's modular, AI Act first, and ideally scalable, that prioritizes compliance with the AI Act by basically simplifying the whole governance process into three layers. So we have a first layer, we name it orchestration layer, where we want to set the top level strategy and policies of the company. Then we have an integration layer where we embed compliance into technical infrastructure, also process templates and tools, so that they can act, as a multiplier to be able to apply these policies in multiple AI use cases. And the last layer is the execution layer, is where we actually apply these policies and control within each individual AI project and make sure that they comply with all the requirements that are outlined. Of course, this is a very short summary of the pyramid. We have a very long white paper of about 60 pages detailing each of the steps on this pyramid. You can see here the QR code in case you want to access and read it with a bit more detail. And that brings me to the next topic. So the question why we're here today. So we want to share today with you a set of steps that are actionable across the whole AI governance pyramid that ideally could help you or could support your company to scale AI governance. And here my colleague Josh is going to explain a little bit more in detail what we mean by these 7 steps.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for this great introduction. So indeed, as Alex already mentioned, one of the important suggestions in the white paper is like what are a number of concrete steps in order to set up a proper AI governance in a way that is scalable. And many of the steps obviously make quite a lot of sense. It all starts by basically identifying your obligations, because depending on the type of activities that you have in the company and also the type of, say, vision you have on where you want to go with respect to implementing AI in your organization will depend somehow or will impact what are the specific obligations that you might have. So clearly, that's one of the most important aspects uh, of this. And related to that is, of course, as well, identifying then what are actually all the systems that are in scope for such a program, because you cannot really do risk management or look for compliance if you haven't identified what is the scope of the activity really. Then, of course, an extremely important one in order to make anything as complex as this work is to have proper AI governance, which is step 2. And then once you have decided on the scope and the governance setup that you would like to implement, then clearly it's important to early already in the program assess gaps that you might have in tooling, but also in processes in order to have sufficient time to remediate those. And after that, there are a number of steps related to more implementation, meaning meaning looking at the technical requirements, also how to set up controls, how, of course, to make sure that everyone in the organization is AI literate and understands the requirements. And then finally, there is, of course, the last step, which is about reporting, making sure that everyone is up to date so that you can also identify the points where you can improve going forward. So these are the 7 main steps. And of course, this is a lot of material to cover and to to talk about. So maybe if I may start with a more general question, if you you have made that proposal based on all the discussions with different stakeholders in this area. If you look across the industry, how long do you think it takes to set up such a program from scratch until, say, arriving at a point where you can say, look, this is a mature organization who properly has, like, where everyone fully understands the requirements and where you have really a system that is up and running stably in production? Maybe I can ask start asking that question to Ara, given your hands-on expertise in this.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Josh. That's a very interesting question. And there is there is no rule of thumb, and there is also not specific number for making that. But I guess most of all here in this webinar, we all have a little bit or a lot of project management experience, and introducing such a new regulatory framework into your company will depend already on.
I'm sorry, the sound again broke, Ara. Sorry. You are on mute.
I don't know what happens. I don't know why it happens all the time. So sorry for that.
It's okay. It's
Well,
an issue with an algorithm, I'm sure. Yeah.
yes, there's
there are
something
some
you don't
hand
want me to
gestures.
tell.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
so let's start from the project management perspective. Yeah, we already have been there, or most of us will have some or a little or a lot of experience on project management. So the first step of identifying your landscape, this is the most important step, because once you know what are the AI systems that you have, what is your role if you are a provider or a deployer according to the AI Act and the risk class, then you can start planning on what are the resources that you need to pour into fulfilling all these gaps and setting up this framework. And it can take you, depending on how large your team is, from maybe 6 months to maybe more than a year. And it will always depend on what is your resources available for that. But definitely you need to also be considering that you need to put a lot of different expertise on the table. So ideally to have someone who is managing this as a project, not just as a something that you need to do on top. And you also have experts on the different topics that the AI Act is also covering. So you may have, if you have high risk AI systems, you will have a bunch of obligations, for example, on data, and then you will need to go and talk to your data scientists on how they are currently working, what are the processes that they have currently in place, and then how can you pour the requirements from the AI Act into those processes, because you want to speed them up, right? You don't want to stop them with more processes. If you want to optimize those already, and also bring in the requirements from the AI Act. So from coming back to the question, there is no, I cannot tell you it's going to take this long to implement the AI Act requirements or setting up such a framework. It's very specific to every company, depending on their role, on the number of AI systems that they have, and the risk class that they have.
Okay. I fully understand that it's indeed a highly context depending answer. But I also then kind of retain that you mentioned typically, like even just simply identifying the scope can already take between 6 months and 1 year. I also noticed that there is a bit of feedback, so maybe anyone who speaks, if you don't speak, it's better to put yourself on mute to avoid some additional noise. Thank you. So then we already discussed. So yeah, if you could, okay, perfect. So then you already briefly mentioned deployer versus provider. Ara, maybe that's a good topic to explore a little bit further, because indeed there is huge difference in the requirements if you basically use an AI system and make it available, or if you are building such a system and then sell that or give that away to deployers. So this is the distinction between provider and deployer. A question maybe to Kuba on this topic. So is it always clear what category you are in when we are talking about deployer versus provider, and especially in the context of, say, building a chatbot, for instance? And if I, for instance, create a system prompt, does that mean I would be a provider?
Well, my usual answer is it depends. It really, in terms of identifying landscape for the project, there's a challenge that Alex mentioned in the beginning of this talk, and I really want to circle back to it. There's a great need for clear guidance in terms of AI governance, especially in EU AI Act, to actionable controls, and that's a big challenge in EU AI Act. It is a comprehensive and very general regulation, and that's a big strength because it applies to all the AI that we live with and that we develop on the same level. But the same problem poses a challenge that we lack concrete guidance in terms of understanding AI and roles around that. So if you ask me if you are a provider or a deployer of said chatbot, it depends on the context, how much of the tech stack is being developed by us and how much of it is being purchased from the supply chain downstream. And 99% of cases you would probably be just a provider, but I can see, I've seen challenges where examples where such deployer of a chatbot might be in fact a considered to an elsewhere role. And if we're talking about because I try to circle back, I want to circle back to this process of 7 steps. How we implement AI governance. It's very important to see this process as everything with AI in 2 verticals. One is implementing the system in its maturity, and the other is tracking its maturity by KPIs and understanding its maturity in terms of stages of, I like to refer to agile stages of development. That's crawl, walk, run, and scale. Because if we, for example, if we map our chatbots, it's enough on a very basic stage of a compliance with AI Act to map them, to have their repository and database of them somewhere in Excel file. But that's not where AI governance is heading. And AI governance in compliance with EU AI Act is a continuous process. That's a regulation that has been in effect since February when it comes to prohibited systems and high-risk systems since summer this year. So it's very, very early. And there's a lot of gaps to still be filled. And that's something that we really need to remember, that it's a process of trial and error to understand those and mapping those concrete controls.
Exactly. That's also what we have seen in the past in the financial sector. So maybe just a bit of context. Yields has historically started providing model risk management software for finance, where you have extremely similar regulation already in place for quite some time, trying to mitigate the risk of using mathematical models, but then in the context of finance. So here as well, there is always interpretation required, and there is, say, a common learning track between the organizations, the banks, and the regulator to kind of agree on a way forward. And here as well, that's why it's so interesting in this setup, that it's kind of by design almost an iterative setup. So it's important to start to document, say, make up your own mind as an organization. What's the risk appetite that you have? Based on that, document what you would like to do and start working on that. And of course, it might be that at some point, say, regulator might not be fully aligned with your interpretation, especially while we are still waiting for all kinds of standards to come up. But then at least you have the evidence that you have thought about it, that you have made a number of choices, and that's definitely a good way forward. Alexander, as you have also, you have like led a lot of these activities, and you have a good overview of, say, where the community is heading. Is this also the stage where that you believe is the most important, like the one where an organization defines basically what's their risk appetite and what's going to be the scope really of their AI program?
Absolutely. I think that's the beginning of the journey. So pretty much, as Araceli said, you need to first understand your risk landscape, ideally not just from one use case, but from a set of use cases, because you should not define your strategy one use case that you selected first, but actually you need to understand if actually it makes sense, for example, to implement high-risk AI systems. Is it actually this use case is bringing you the business value that your company needs to compete with a, let's say, moderate or acceptable technical complexity? So on the first hand, definitely understand basically your risk landscape. Number two, also based on your risk appetite, define what you want to implement. Do we want to do high risk, or for now, let's only focus on low risk because we're new in AI. Let's just have some quick wins so we can have some momentum, and maybe later we can do it. We have seen both perspectives. Also, in one of the extremes, we see companies that says, okay, I don't care about high risk because even though it's hard, the first time we do this, it will take us maybe a lot of time. But for the second and third AI use case, the time needed is going to be drastically lower and lower. And at the end, maybe it will be the same time that you need to do AI use cases. So we have seen both perspectives depending how mature the companies are. Also wanted to add to what Jakub or Kuba said. It's about the risk classification. I have seen also a lot of companies at the beginning using Excel files, But now we see a clear trend moving more towards the hub and spoke models, where basically business units can just use self-service templates just to fill out the questions of the risk classification method, and then maybe just automatically they get a response, or the whole governance team get an email with basically a request to now classify this. And I think this works a bit better than the central model when we have companies where you have only one person or a couple of persons doing the risk classification of all the AI use cases, which this central model creates a very big bottleneck. Of course, if you're a startup, doesn't matter. Probably both models will work. But if you're a big company, we have seen bottlenecks created already by that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I would actually like to explore that a little bit further. It's not. I'm not going to go through the 7 steps in a sequential manner in this way, but I think it's an important topic. So indeed, if you want not to have a central bottleneck, it means that you want to distribute this approach really. But in order to distribute this properly, you also need to make sure that there is enough people in the organization who understand all of this, who have the skills, who are a little bit AI literate, say, to know how to organize this. So how does that work in practice? And maybe Ara, that's a good question for you, as you are working in this medical sector. In the organizations, what are, say, good training programs, say, to make sure that people are aware?
That's an excellent question. So I think I'm going to take a step back because it's going to be very, very difficult to do. Well, I find it very difficult to do the classification, the AI system classification. But it's very important that you get it right from the beginning. Otherwise, the effort that you will need to tackle all the requirements of the AI Act is really goes to extremes. So for the low risk devices or AI systems, you don't have that many requirements. But if you are in the high risk AI system, then you need to comply with a bunch, and you really want to take that classification right from day one. And it also will depend extremely on what is the vertical regulation. So I think we haven't spoken about it, but the AI Act is this horizontal regulation across all the different sectors in the industry, right? And if you go and read the definition or the classification when your device is a high risk AI system, then it will lead you to go and look in what your vertical regulation is saying. So for the medical device sector, we need to go and see what is the medical regulation telling us when you have a specific type of medical device in a specific class, then you are a high risk AI system automatically. And you need here not just the expertise from the horizontal AI Act, but you also need on top the expertise from your vertical. So depending on what is your industry, you may need to find a strategic decision who to prepare for that decision. You want to have your vertical experts gaining more experience or gaining more knowledge into the vertical, or you want to have them separated and talk to each other. So I think these are two different approaches, but you cannot have the one without the other. So there needs to be this communication between both regulations and the same interpretation, because you need to get it right from the beginning. And
Yes.
so for the medical device sectors, there are a lot of courses and a lot of online programs that you can go and look for AI. For AI, knowledge, to get more knowledge. But I think at the end, most of the practice comes from actually looking at use cases. And in the medical device sector, there is a kind of a blue book from the European Commission, which some examples of when a specific medical device is classified as this class and this class. And I think that would be extremely helpful if such a document would be available from, for example, also the Commission, to have these examples of when an AI system was classified as high risk and when it was not. and maybe also in different contexts. I think such that will bring a lot of insights also and experience.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and getting indeed more feedback from the regulator, from the commission is going to be extremely helpful. In the meantime, of course, we have to work with the material that we have. And indeed, thanks for shedding the lights on that, Ara. I also see a few questions from the audience, and there are a few from another Alexander actually, and also Judith, asking more about how should smaller organizations work, because this is, of course, it's only 7 steps, but if you want to do each of the steps carefully and thoughtfully, it's a lot of work, and there is somehow also a level to strike, in a sense, to be pragmatic. So what are good handles or good starting points here? And maybe I'll first ask Alex, since you have an overview, a good overview of different types of organizations, like what do
Yep.
you see as working well there?
Absolutely. No, very, very good question, and actually very important. So this white paper was done based on very large companies' input. So this framework of governance is mostly addressing very large companies. If you want to have a lean version of this, basically maybe it's not about your risk landscape anymore, but it's about the risk class of your main AI system, or maybe you have only one if you are a very small company. You need to set up, instead of an AI governance process, maybe pretty much it's just a checklist of what risk classes you want to implement, put the clear checklist, assess gaps, maybe means if you have an open source tool stack, just take a look what tools are covering what requirement. And if you find some gaps, try to connect it with more tools to cover those gaps, and so on. So basically, it's more like a lean approach of this very big governance one. The whole purpose of this white paper was to support very large companies, not startups. So that's the first.
Yes,
Sorry, I
and
think Kuba has a
Kuba,
question.
I'm sure you have something to add here.
Yeah, I think I wanted to take this and add something to your answer, Alex. So I spent quite a lot of time working with startups and smaller organizations which implemented AI Act. And what from my experience, it's good to start with AI literacy as a point of entry. This is because AI literacy translates into, because smaller organizations usually have many different roles packed into very little people, right? And, I can imagine, I've seen number of cases where a person responsible for GDPR suddenly is responsible for whole of AI Act in a 50 or something plus people organization. And it's good to start, at least from my experience, it worked quite well. Because if we start with AI literacy, then those use cases and those artifacts related to AI Act start emerging sort of naturally in a small organization, because there is a lot of information transference. And we do not need to focus on those artifacts that we have in those 7 steps as much, because people in the organization themselves start to uncover those avenues, and working to filling those gaps is much easier. Because if, for example, we start educating about high-risk systems, what are prohibitive systems, developers and technical staff immediately see those in action. And if they don't, they will be corrected, or they can be notified by their colleagues. And I find this place to be a good starting point. Of course, we follow up with steps of maturity, and we implement all the necessary steps. But this helps us see the landscapes much easier, and it secures buy-in from people from the organization. They understand why they're doing this, and they collaborate much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree. If you have more literacy and more understanding in the entire organization, and of course, you start making structural improvements. Another item here would be, I believe, to focus, and that's also what you, Alex, alluded to really have a risk-based prioritization in the end, right? If you are a small company as well, and you have limited bandwidth to deal with the massive requirements of something like an AI Act, it's important to start from, say, the most important risks, and these will be highly depending on the context in which you are operating, and that can guide you to like focus on the important points first. Maybe a last question, still a bit in the same area related to AI literacy, and the pyramid that you kind of have introduced. The first layer, the orchestration layer, contains especially like also oversight, right? And senior management stewardship or buy-in is extremely important for a successful program to succeed. Simultaneously, certain aspects of the AI Act are fairly technical, and it's kind of important that there is somewhere a senior sponsor to how who can help drive this. What is your experience with, say, what works well when it comes to senior management buy-in? What type of reporting do you believe is extremely helpful in that discussion? Any learnings from the field? And maybe I'll start again with Ara.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very important topic. So you need to understand also what are the goals from the management. So why do they want to have this technology implemented, right? You need also to have a clear understanding of what is the use case behind it. And then once you have that, then you can start building all this oversight and the reporting and the evaluation. You can then derive all the metrics that you need, but sometimes it's very difficult to get the understanding from the upper management to bring how valuable this technology is, or also understand sometimes they just want to have AI for the sake of having AI. It might sometimes be a marketing trend that somebody wants to follow, but then it needs to be really clear that having something like that brings also a lot of effort, especially if you have a high risk system that you need that you want to deploy. So I think having this conversation between the orchestration layer and the integration layer and the execution layer, so the three of them, they need to come into a round table and get everyone the same understanding of what is the goal. And once you have that, then the rest, oversight, evaluation, the reporting will come up, because you cannot have any reporting. How do you need to derive, or you need to find the correct metrics for evaluating and then reporting? And most of them will come from the execution layer based on the goals of what is the orchestration layer wanting to do.
Okay, very clear. Conscious of time, Kuba, do you have any books or articles in your library about, say, senior management buy-in, or things that, like pointers to the literature that we should be aware of? Anything?
Uh, yes, as a matter of fact, I do, and I strongly recommend. There are, I think, two reports. One is from Google. The other is, I don't know. I don't remember the authors, but there are at least two documents relating to ROI of ethical. And I'll follow up on what Ara said. Why those are valuable. We are at this stage of AI in our life where pretty much everybody in tech sector are aware of the benefits of using such technology. What is challenging is convincing senior management that doing it ethically is valuable, and coming to terms to speaking the same language and showing the benefits, the financial benefits, the organizational benefits. It's a very good avenue of approaching this challenge.
Okay, perfect. And we can probably share those pointers after the event. Then as we only have a few minutes left, we did have a poll prepared still that is maybe interesting to ask the audience about. We have in step 4 the fact that we'd like to streamline as much as possible the technical implementation, and this also requires tools if we want to do this in an efficient way. AI Act has a huge number of requirements. What can be done using technology? Can technology help here, really? And let's see what the audience says about this. And in the meantime, give some time for Alex to join again. Okay, welcome back.
Yeah, I was listening all the time. For some reason, the video stopped.
Okay, that's okay, no problem. So let's see what the audience says about the tools they are using. Excel, as always, is a very popular solution.
Very
Indeed. um, very good. Let's give the audience a little bit of more time. I think we forgot the option none, but maybe others can hold that as well. Okay, so yeah, just seeing the results, it looks like still a majority has either Excel or Jira and Confluence, which has, of course, not tools specifically designed for AI governance, but say good starting points potentially. Any thoughts on this, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So today's webinar is about scaling AI governance. So we see some companies that start just basically implementing an end-to-end tool stack to comply with the AI Act. But maybe every team is going to do the same activity in a way that it's just recreating the wheel multiple times. And
Yeah,
ideally,
exactly.
the goal of the integration layer is pretty much to avoid that, so that you have kind of a hub and spoke, either central hub and spoke model, where you have to basically define your policies in your technical infrastructure, for example, with MLOps templates through CI/CD pipelines, for example, and also centralized tests that the business units can just basically instantiate in their department, use, and basically comply or generate a report that's also standardized. So I think that's also a good practice to scale, because then the governance team who receives the report, they know exactly what questions to spec. It's faster. They can also evaluate across different departments and so on. So this is a typical practice, we think, and
Yeah,
that also helps to scale AI governance.
yeah,
And as we said at the beginning, very important, if you go one slide back, it always starts by the management. So if you see in the basically in the roles, for us, it's basically following ISO 38507. You start in the AI management in the orchestration layer, and only when you have the management buy-in, basically they design and delegate these tasks to the AI governance team to be able to basically downstream all these tasks to the MLOps team, as I said, with this infrastructure, and then to the business unit. But basically, it starts in the management always, definitely.
yes. Okay, thanks. Great feedback. I would maybe also add, when it comes to using technology, that if I again look back at what finance does, in finance, model risk management is like starts always from the model and its life cycle, and um, because of this approach, you can share a lot of information across multiple use cases. Giving an example from AI, if I'm using Claude, for instance, to as the LLM to build my chatbots, if I have 20 chatbots, all using exactly the same stack but used in a different context, it would be 20 AI use cases, but they share the same technology stack. So if you can kind of make the relationships clear in your inventory, then it also avoids duplication. Secondly, if you can make the information easily searchable, then it's not just a compliance tool, but it also becomes a knowledge base, really, that can also be interesting for data scientists, for engineers, for risk managers, for compliance officers, of course, as well. And it's a knowledge base of the company that is, again, supported by many. Okay, we are actually at time, so I wanted to first of all thank everyone for this very interesting discussion. What I remember most of this discussion is that it's all about people in the end, right? We need to focus on AI literacy, need to make sure that also the board and C-level senior management fully understands where we are going. And if we have that common understanding, then the prioritization of the tasks ahead should probably be more easy and can be scaled more efficiently. So thanks a lot to my panelists, but also thanks a lot to the audience for the questions and for participating in the polls. We'll share the information afterwards as well, and some pointers, so you can still review and continue this interesting path towards AI governance and compliance. So thanks everyone, and hope to see you back next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.